Dude, I was as extreme and fundamental as you could be. I mean, I was the poster child, and now I'm the other way.
I think it's interesting that he said I was the poster child for that, and now I'm the poster child like the opposite way. And Sam and I have talked about this before, where your personality, or like especially when you're taught to like share the truth.
Yeah.
A lot of times, people will say, you can leave a religion, but you can't leave it alone. Or that when you leave, people won't, stop fighting against what they had before. Or in this case, people from the AUB are going to be looking at Brady and being like, now you're fighting against AUB and you're saying then no one should live polygamy. Why would you do that? But the way you're raised and ingrained to teach the truth, if your truth changes or what you believe to be true changes, that inherent need and what you've been taught to share that with other people, that piece of you doesn't change.
Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in the FLDS community. It is a polygamous group run by Warren Jeffs, and I moved out when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS. Sam and I have been married for 9 years and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. We want to quickly thank our donors, YouTube members, and our patrons over on Patreon. We really do appreciate your support.
Yes, we also want to mention that for all of our patrons and our YouTube members, you now have access to the Growing Up in Polygamy cruise that we're going to be doing for my birthday next February. You can check that out at growingupinpolygamy.com using the special password that we put on our Patreon and members post. And for the rest of all of our awesome viewers, you'll have access to that July 1st.
Yes, we're very excited about that cruise coming up. We also wanted to just point out really quickly that down in the description below, there will be a Amazon wish list for the Dream Center that you can all jump on and help donate some of these items to the Dream Center that we are helping renovate one of the rooms for them. And we will have some before and after footage coming up soon. So thank you all so much.
Yes, just recently we have reviewed the show My 5 Wives, both seasons. You can click on the link above if you want to see the videos on our review of those. And as we've been watching these, we wanted to learn a lot more about like Brady and how he left from the LDS church to the AUB and kind of a little bit more about that. And the more research we did, we found out that there was this podcast interview that he had done years ago, about 6 years ago. And so we thought, well, if we can't get Brady on ourselves, then we should react to this and get to see what his podcast interview was like. And we hear there's a lot of great information on his past and what it was like becoming polygamist.
Yes, so hopefully we can learn a little bit more about the AUB, which is the religious background that Brady came from. And hopefully we can get some of the answers to the questions we had about I don't know, why the show just came to an abrupt end like that, and maybe a little bit about what's going on after the show.
Yes, so we are going to dive in. So here we go.
All right.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jimmy Rex Show. Today I am here with Brady Williams. I had the chance to meet Brady a couple months ago at a symposium downtown at the Salt Lake City Library, and immediately just really connected with Brady just really struck me as a very loving, unique person that I wanted to kind of find out more about, and I really appreciate what you had to say that day. So appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
It's been good to get to know you a little bit here. So the reason why we were both there is it was a symposium that was basically took people from Mormon backgrounds that do it different ways than the norm. And me and you probably couldn't be any different in our backgrounds. I'm 36 years old, never been married, no children. You are polygamous, 5 wives, 25 children, and you now have 2 grandchildren, 3 grandchildren.
2 grandchildren.
2 grandchildren.
Yep.
Okay.
47.
Excellent. So I want to kind of start out with tell us a little bit about how your dynamic of your family is. How does that look? Like you have 5 wives, 25 children. Explain a little bit of what just the dynamic of your family.
Yeah, so, I grew up mainstream LDS till I was 16, 17 years old, and then converted to Mormon Fundamentalism, the AUB group, and there I just got married and and pretty soon 5 wives and 25 kids later, here I am.
Here you are. And so how did you start your first marriage? How old were you at that point?
I was 21.
21. Okay.
Yeah, I was 21 when I married Polly, 22 when I married Robin, 24, 25, I can't remember when I married Rosemary. And then a couple years later, I married Noni. And then when I was 29, I married Rhonda.
Wow. Okay.
So by the time I was 29, I was done.
You had
getting
been married 5 times. So like I said, our paths probably couldn't be any more different in that regard. Do you ever like forget the names of your kids, or can you remember all 25?
Oh yeah, of course.
Right off the top of your head.
Yeah. I mean, I do the dad thing, like Josh.
Well, I know my dad. We only had 7 kids, which is a lot, but and he to this day calls all of us the wrong names all the time.
Sure. No, but if you asked me to name all my kids, I could name them.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure, you get upset.
I love it. Well, and so you and your family were had your own television show on TLC called My 5 Wives.
That's right.
And so tell us a little bit about that. What made you want to do something like that, like the TV show? What was it that you thought, why go into letting somebody into that private life of yours?
Sure.
And let them in?
Well, for years we had been approached by different networks and producers trying to get us to do a show. And like when Big Love was going, they asked us to do an after show. You know how they do the after shows, and where we'd sit and discuss the previous episode and how realistic was it and stuff. And they just didn't. The offer just wasn't good enough, because this is a very conspicuous lifestyle. I mean, it's illegal, and if we're going to put everything on the line, we need to be compensated and believe in it. And the show they were offering, and every other show that was offered to us, was to...
Were they trying to exploit?
Yeah, it was a little bit scandalous, a little bit, they just wanted to do the dark side of it all.
I will say that we'd had people ask us to review Big Love before. Mm-hmm. And not that we won't ever do it, but we started watching, and within like the first episode, we were like, this is so TV. They didn't have the proper polygamous insider source to like tell them how to act. Like on cop shows, how they have real cops come and be like, this is how you act like a real cop. They did not have a polygamous person to come in and give them some tips on that. So I'm not surprised they turned that down.
Well, and I don't know. And he says that they didn't give him a good enough offer. I wonder if that just means money, or if it was that he didn't feel comfortable talking about a show like that because it was so different. I don't know. But we haven't seen, we saw a couple episodes of Big Love, but we haven't seen all the way through to see if it gets better along as time goes on. But yes, it's very nothing like the way I was raised in polygamy anyway.
Yeah.
Or titillating. And then the producers who approached us about this show with TLC had a different story, and so we were willing to go down that road and that adventure for sure.
Well, because your situation is so unique. Even polygamists kind of reject the way that you and your wives and family live, in the sense that you're not a member currently of a fundamentalist church. You guys just believe in the actual relationship style that you have, right? Explain that.
Yeah, so, a little bit of history to understand. So
Please,
I was mainstream LDS until I was 17. And then I was fundamentalist LDS it's been 12 years, so maybe 35 years old.
And do you mind if I stop you real quick? Because that's an intriguing part of the story, is how did you go from mainstream LDS to fundamentalist polygamous LDS?
Okay. My dad converted to the AUB, and through study and doing the Mormon history, and any real scholar of Mormon history will realize that there's some real inaccuracies in the mainstream story, at least the most popular storyline. And so he presented it to us kids and my mom and said, hey, here's the AUB, and I really think there's something to it. And after I studied, my whole family joined, and then I joined maybe, 6-9 months later on my own terms after I investigated it. And then I was wholesale into that till 35. And I served it, I drank that Kool-Aid,
Before we get into his experience in the AUB, I just have to say that within mainstream Mormonism, this is kind of a typical path for people to go from mainstream to fundamentalism. When people find church history, a lot of times it goes, two ways. Either they say, I can't accept this history. That's too much. It can't be the truth. And they leave the church altogether. Or they say, well, I do believe that this history was the truth, and the mainstream LDS church is no longer doing it that way. Therefore, they've fallen away, and I'm going to find the truth in fundamentalism, in those root core doctrine concepts that were from the very beginning.
Right, because if you believe in the beginnings of the church and the origins of the church, I guess you could say, but you don't like some of the things that are going on in the church today, then you start looking back to the way it used to be, and voila, that's where fundamentalist Mormonism comes from people that didn't agree with the changes that the church is making, because the church, the mainstream LDS church, is making big strides towards keeping up with society, right? I'm not saying that they're going along with everything, because there will be a lot of people right here that will say that the LDS church is nowhere close to keeping up with the way that the world is going. But compared
to the fundamentals
fundamentalists, especially the FLDS, and I think the AUB is very similar, but my personal experience in the FLDS, they were not willing to change at all with society. And so over time, that puts society way, way over here, and the FLDS church still trying to hold on strong to what was going on hundreds of years ago, and it's just not accepted in society anymore, and it makes it very challenging. It's one of the reasons that the FLDS church felt that they needed to be secluded from the world and kept in this bubble so that the world wouldn't corrupt their belief system.
Yeah, but I just had to point out, because it is interesting that whether it's falling away completely from the mainstream LDS church or going to fundamentalism, a lot of times that can actually be on the same road and going down the same journey, and then it can end up in two very separate places.
Yep.
It was dark blue and delicious, man.
How hard was that to go from mainstream LDS? I mean, did your dad take on more wives at that point then, or did you take on more wives first? Or
No, my dad got married again.
Okay.
He got married 2 more times.
Was that difficult to see your dad take on additional wives in that time?
It was tough, but I really believed it. I was a true believer, and so I went in wholesale, and I became I was the best little Mormon boy. And then I was the best little Mormon fundamentalist.
Okay.
As good as I could be, I climbed the ladder. I became a bishop. I became a 70 apostle.
Oh, wow. What age were you when you became a 70 apostle?
I was 30.
Okay.
29 maybe.
That's very young, by the way. So to be that young and having been previously a bishop, like when somebody's a bishop in their 20s, it's normally... culturally, it's just kind of this sign of like, okay, a spiritual giant. He'll go on to be very high up in the church later, because most of the highest church leaders tend to be older men. And so when you see people starting to, as Brady says, climb the ladder and start in those higher positions as young as in their 20s, or to be a 70 at the age of 30, I don't think there's a single 70 in the mainstream LDS church that's in their 30s.
Not that I know of. I don't know of any that have ever been. I'm sure in the beginnings of the church it was more common.
It was a huge deal when, I can't remember which mainstream LDS apostle it was like in his 50s. And he was
I think it was Bednar.
Yeah, he was, to be in your 50s and be an apostle was like, you are super young. You are a young buck. So. Yeah,
but once again, being in this AUB or the fundamentalist group that he came from, I don't think they had as many people to pick from. So like he said, he was all in. He was 100% in, and he was believing, and he was doing everything just right. I think maybe that's why not having a whole lot of people to choose from in a group as small as they are, that it was more likely for him to become in this high calling at this young age.
Possibly. But think of like a bishop in your 20s.
That would be crazy.
And I can't imagine there are that many wards. So, there's got to be older men that are also, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see the statistics on like, okay, how big their group is comparatively, to be able to say whether or not, or if anybody knows Brady, or Brady wants to comment and let us know whether or not being a 70 at the age of 30 is as big of a deal as what I would guess it would be.
Yeah.
I was probably 29 when they named me for that.
And as part of like taking the wives, is that required to move up the ladder in the religion, or was that more so I've heard your story enough. I know that you are unique in the sense that you didn't ever aspire to take on more wives. You just actually happened to fall in love over and over again with these different women. Is that?
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, the first wife was just like any other man out there. You know, I just found her, fell in love, we dated, and I married Polly. And I never really chased any. I mean, there's a lot of men out there, and they send their wives out to find another wife or whatever, and I just wasn't going to have any of that. And I was fortunate enough that every one of my wives pursued me in one fashion or another. I mean, from their father actually coming and saying, "Hey, my daughter's interested," to them just dropping the big hint and, you know, and making it very obvious that they wanted to investigate being in my family. And so I just kind of carefully considered, and they came.
So each time that you took on another wife, would that be a family decision with the other wives, or was that kind of just known that, hey, if I'm going to take on more wives, that might be part of the program? Or did you have a sit down or like a talk with the other wives every time, or how does that conversation go?
Yeah, of course they were considered. I mean, you know, they had a voice and they had a vote, and I mean, there was other women that were really interested in coming into our family that the wives just put the kibosh on and said, no, we just don't feel good about it. And I actually felt really good about it. And I was like, no, I really think she should be. And at that time, it was just Polly, Robin, and Rose, and the one woman I'm thinking of. And they just says, I'm sorry, we're not. And so we ended it.
It's interesting that he talks about the fact that all of the wives were coming to him, because that's the same thing Cody Brown would say, right?
Yep.
That the wives all wanted to be a part of his family. But I do appreciate that Brady is willing to say, you know, he had to feel good about it and his wives had to feel good about it all together in order for him to say yes. Where Cody makes it sound like he was just kind of suckered into it, that, oh, if a woman wanted to join my family, well, I kind of had to, and I never really fell in love, which we know is bullcrap anyway. But just saying, rather than just this, oh, I just had to take on more wives because if someone wanted to be a part of my family. But with Brady, it sounds like it was a lot more like someone wanted to be, that didn't just mean they were automatically in.
The question was asked but not answered here, if he had to have multiple wives to be in these higher callings. And I don't think it's something that is said, hey, you have to have more wives, but it's going to be, I think, just a feeling that everyone has, because if you are worthy to be in these high callings, you're also going to be a man that is
living the principle
and also worthy of multiple wives. And I don't know. I think that every leader of the church is going to have multiple wives for sure.
And that's probably what's helped your family, because so kind of fast forward, you decide you're going to leave the Fundamentalist church. Most polygamists, I think every other polygamous person I've ever met or heard about, is very closely tied to the religion itself.
Yeah.
And so how did that work for you? How did the decision come about to leave the church? And then I want to follow that up with asking how that affected the family and how you guys decided to stay together.
So there was it was a journey. And I've always been one who asks the questions, and I'm unafraid of the answer. And there were just some serious questions as I keep studying, and there were the concepts of male superiority within the fundamentalist group, and bigotry, racial and gender, and sexual orientation. All of these things that they just didn't stand up to the glare of my inspection, and I was just like, but I was so deep in. And I mean, I was a leader in this group, and I had every one of my wives, either their father or their grandfather is an apostle or the prophet.
Wow.
And so it was a very scary move to make.
And so when you started kind of going down that path, obviously it's a progression, like you said. There's not like it just one thing that maybe happened or whatever. At what point did you alert your wives that you were having these doubts and things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, there were several aha moments for me, and one of the deepest ones was I am a wilderness survival nut, and I was back at this wilderness survival week. and out in the woods, and I met this. Have I told you this
No,
story?
I've never heard this story. Please share. No.
It could be the long. I'll give you the short version because there's the long version and the short version. But I met this young man named Justin, and so real short. Where I'm in I think it's the Minneapolis airport. I don't know why I had a layover there, but I did to get to New Jersey, flying into Newark, and I'm just sitting there waiting for my connecting flight, and I see this guy, and he's tattooed. He's probably mid-20s, and skinhead, and he's got tattoos crawling up out of his shirt collar, and he's in the smokers lounge and smokers area, and he's smoking on a cigarette, and I'm just walking by. I don't know why I catch his eye, but I do, and he just looks at me and he smiles, and I was just like, whatever, and I go on to my gate, and then I get on the plane, and sure enough, this guy walks by me and he looks at me and oh, hi, on the same flight, and I don't think anything of it. And then I get to Newark, and we get on the same bus to go to this, and two and two put together, we're going to the same wilderness retreat. And through the course of this week, I'm just drawn to Justin, because every time I see him being so kind and so loving and courteous and compassionate to everybody. And I watch, and so there's this woman, I tell this story a lot when I speak, but and she's middle-aged, she's heavy-set, she's balding, and she has facial hair, and I just feel kind of pity, and I don't reach out to her, and I don't. I'm just kind of keeping to myself because I'm a priesthood holder and I shouldn't be associating with Gentiles anyway. But I see this woman and I leave her alone, and I notice Justin sitting around a campfire, and it's like lunch or something. He sits down and we have some free time, and he's just sitting there talking to her. And I think, and he's not just saying hi and doing his duty as being kind. He's obviously very interested. He's having a very involved conversation with him. Oh, that's interesting. And then I notice, I call him the Fabio guy. And he's this 30-something-year-old guy who's just ripped and long, gorgeous hair, and everybody wants to be his friend. And I see Justin find him and sits and talks to him. And I knew, something inside me knew that it struck me that Justin didn't see a middle-aged, overweight, balding woman, and he didn't see Fabio, the good-looking 35-year-old guy. He just saw someone to be loved. And I just kept watching him, and he kept on reaching out to me, who was this guy who kept to himself. And he just, hey, how you doing? How's your time? And one night, like 3 or 4 days in, I says, hey, can I talk to you? He's like, yeah, sure. And I says, can I know your story? Like, what's up with you? Like, you're so kind and good. And he's just like, dude, I love telling my story. And he tells the story about being a troubled teen in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin. And his brother is in prison for manslaughter and had gotten caught up in gangs and drugs and all that. And he says, and I was just following in the footsteps. In the neighborhood, you had very few choices. You either joined a gang or you went to prison. And he says, so I got into it. I did everything. I was in drugs. I was messing around with girls. I was crime. And my mom, and I was 15. And my mom was like, I'm not going to lose another boy. And so she sent me to the woods of Washington in one of these Outward Bound programs,
like for troubled youth or whatever.
The troubled youth wilderness thing.
Sure.
And he says, Brady, I shit you not. I am out in the middle of the woods. They bring me a bag of rice and a bag of beans and a gallon of water a day, and they just leave me in this place, and I have no idea how to get out. And I'm sitting there taking a leak, and I turn around, and there's a bear from me to you, and we're this close.
Wow. Okay.
And he says, the bear's standing on its legs and is growling. And he said, I knew I was going to get eaten. I was dead. And I just said, God save me. And he said, as soon as I said that, the bear dropped down on all fours, turned and walked away. And he said, me and God for the rest of the week had a conversation. And I asked him, okay, my life's yours. What do I owe you? I get chills even talking about this still, right? Yeah. And he says, all God wanted from me is to love everyone I meet for the rest of my life. And I go, that's it? And he goes, yeah, that's it. That's it. And I go, well, so what religion are you? And he goes, I don't even know what you really mean by that. And I go, well, are you Christian? And he goes, that's that Christ dude, right? Nah, I don't even know anything about him.
Wow.
And I'm born and raised LDS, Christ. The only way someone could be this good is if he was Mormon. Or at least Christian. And this guy's going I don't know, that's that Christ dude. But so it was 1 a.m. when we finished talking. I go back to my debris hut out in the middle of the woods, I'm sleeping in the pine needles. And I am so humiliated because it was really revealed to me that I was pathetic. I was so self-righteous. I thought I had it made. I was a 70 apostle. I had 5 wives. I had my quorum of wives. I was going to heaven.
You had checked off the checklist, everything that was required,
oh, yeah.
Right?
I had it.
Sure.
I had every single checklist. I didn't have any skeletons in my closet. I didn't need to go to my priesthood leader and confess to anything. I was good. I was it. All I had to do was set cruise control. And I was going to be a God in heaven. And I knew I wasn't as good as Justin. And Justin didn't even know who Christ was.
Wow. What a story, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that is something that a lot of people, and I've been through this myself, have this kind of aha moment like Brady has, where you're raised to believe this one specific thing is the only way to live righteously, the only way to return and live with God again. And then you have these life experiences where it's meeting someone or being in a specific situation, and you realize that, no, I am not better than anyone else. Mm-hmm. No one else is inferior to me because of what I believe. But not everyone has that aha moment. But I feel like when you do, and like I say, I have, it's very humbling.
Yeah. I can relate when Brady talks about that he had the checklist, or was it Jimmy who said, you had the checklist down, and that was a huge moment for me as well. I'll never forget the day that I looked at Sam, and even from a Christian perspective, saying, do you feel like what Christ has asked us to do is a lot shorter of a list than what the church, at this time we were both LDS, I said, than what our church tells us we need to do. Mm-hmm. And that was like a huge shifting moment for me, and in Brady's case, this guy Justin is saying that God told him this one thing, and it's only one thing, right? And when Sam and I were talking that day, I was like, Christ tells us 3 things as a Christian that we're supposed to be doing. And I have this checklist, and I feel really good about my checklist. I liked that I could check off the boxes, and I'm supposed to do this and this and mm-hmm. this and this. And it did give me that sense of self-righteousness that okay, I can relax because I'm doing really well because I've done this, and this. Therefore, I am good.
Right. Well, and it takes away the question of, am I doing enough? Right?
Yeah.
Because if you have this checklist and you just know, okay, I'm good. Like Brady said, he was put on cruise control. He was set. He had the wives he needed. He had the positions within the church he needed. He had checked off the boxes, cruise control into heaven. Mm-hmm. Little did he know that something as simple as loving and respecting and treating others around you with love was not on that checklist, right? According to what he just said, that wasn't on his checklist. And so I can see that just being this huge moment of, wow, what am I even doing?
Yeah. I'm excited to see where he kind of takes that, because having those experiences is typically just the beginning of a longer journey.
Right.
And nothing made sense anymore. And I just went to God and I said, where am I at? Like, I know He's better than me. And it was revealed to me, and that I really, everything that I had thought was true was suspect. That I needed to go back and figure it out again. And that was kind of a real crescendo point. And there were other crescendo points.
Sure. That's kind of when you gave yourself permission to kind of open up the cupboard.
I finally just went, okay, nothing is safe. Not even my idea of God is safe. Everything is going to be sacrificed on the altar of suspicion of my beliefs. And that started me on this path to where now I'm not a fundamentalist. In fact, I public speak and I speak out against fundamentalism and really how dangerous it is to have a fundamentalist mindset.
Well, and so what is the belief now that you have instead, and how does that change from what you call a dangerous fundamentalist belief?
Well, I'm very open. In reference to my lifestyle, which a lot of people just can't reconcile, and especially polygamists can't reconcile my lifestyle, because if I don't believe in a religious authority, then I'm just an adulterer. Well, I love my family, and I'm married to them because I love them, and I'm committed to them, and I'm committed to my children and this unit that we've created together. And that's a really beautiful thing. And do we have problems? Sure. Over half the people in America get divorced.
You manage 30 people. That's essentially a small business, right? You always hear small businesses say they're trying to create a family atmosphere. I mean, that's legitimately what you have here. Now 32 with your grandchildren.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest, I guess, problems that you have managing that? Because is it kind of like managing a small business? You kind of treat it that way, or how do you?
Well, there's some elements that are the same. The challenges. Well, you got to feed them and house them.
What's your food bill every month?
It's a lot. What's the actual food bill is probably close to $1,700.
Okay.
$1,600.
That's not so bad.
In food.
Yeah.
But we shop really well. Costco loves us. We need an advertising deal for Costco. But we buy in bulk, and we do really well.
But what are the biggest struggles that come up managing? Do you is it just having enough time to spend with all 29 other members of the family?
Yeah. So for me personally.
For you personally.
Yeah, me personally, one of the things that I lay awake at night the most is that I won't have enough time. And so, because I get it, there's only one of me. And so I sacrifice a lot of what a normal man might, free time and hobby time and friend time. I just don't have that. Like me and you, Jimmy, that's, you get to do what you want. You can travel and do the things that you do. And,
sure.
And that's great.
I have sacrifices to live the way I do, right?
You're right.
Like everybody, we kind of pick and choose the path of sacrifice that we take.
Exactly. And so some of the things I sacrifice, but I also have the benefit of a huge family and children who all love me and look toward me, and some of the validation that gives me as a father and a husband. And so I really love that part of it, and I love to be depended on, and so I do that.
Well, it's super admirable. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast was really to talk about. It's a podcast that really highlights exceptional people. That's kind of my whole platform that I'm trying to, share with other people on this podcast. And you in particularly, to manage the family, because I've seen you guys interact a little bit, and I've kind of watched that. And it legitimately, you guys have a great family structure, and it's so untraditional. So what are a couple of the key things that you've been able to do to keep that peace between the wives and the kids and just that whole dynamic? What are some things that you do? Well,
I've abandoned the patriarchal structure to where the man is the head of the home, right? I still try to, I am a gifted leader, and so it'd be a pity not to utilize my leadership skills. But I've taken that in a different context. Like, we certainly, each one of the wives, their vote counts absolutely as much as my votes. Like, they trump me all the time. Like, nope, we're not doing that. Well, okay, you know. So their voice has to be just as important as my voice. And that's different than the typical fundamentalist, and dare I say, even LDS family. I mean, we could get real controversial if we want to go down that road.
No, fair enough.
I didn't want to cut off what he was saying, but it's interesting that his family's so successful. He feels like because he gets rid of that, because most of the time, you and I have said this multiple times, it seems like the successful, I'm going to put that in quotes, successful polygamous families, in that they stay together, are typically the ones that do adhere to more patriarchy. Because it seems like when the women have more of an opinion and they're able to share that, it leaves more room for contention and there being like opposing views, and then that ends up breaking up families.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I guess it just depends on that. I don't know how willing the family is to work together, because we've seen through this show, My Five Wives, that the wives, whether they were being forced to do it because of the show or because they actually wanted to, we'll never know. But it seemed like, from what we could see, that they did choose to get together and collaborate and come up with decisions together instead of trying to avoid any kind of relationship with each other. So if you have wives that are willing to work together, then he becomes, for lack of a better term, another wife, in the sense that he's another opinion in the pool, but he's not in charge of every opinion. So like I say, if you're in a family dynamic that everyone is willing, all of the parents are willing to work together, then I can see that it would work out okay.
Yeah, I think his wives, sincerely actually did spend time together, because they would talk about the fact that, like, anytime Brady would go out of town with another wife, the rest of them would get together to try to have more fun than what they were having. Or, they kind of joked about that.
Yeah.
I feel like you could tell when they were together for the show, like, even when they were doing things because of the show, the relationship when they were together and the way they would banter and talk, you could tell that it wasn't only for the show. Whereas, like, the Brown family, the sister wives would get together for a lunch, and it was so awkward and so weird. And you're like, and they would even mention, oh, we haven't done this, in 3 years. And we're like, since the last time the show made you do it for X, Y, or Z, right?
Yeah.
Whereas for these wives, you could tell their comfort level being together was big. And then, they might have let the show film it, or maybe they did it more frequently, but you could tell that they had that relationship already as a base.
Yeah, well, just the simple fact that in 2 seasons of My Five Wives, all of the wives got together just as much or more than 18 seasons worth of Sister Wives. You can tell that whether or not the show was encouraging it or not, that the wives were a lot more comfortable together. And you would even hear them joking about, the husband being with another wife and things like that, which I never heard that with the Sister Wives. It was never a joke. No one talked about that because it was too uncomfortable, too much jealousy and that kind of thing. So anyway, I think it just depends on the kind of family it is.
I feel like the Williams wives would joke about how wonderful Brady was, or about how much they loved him. The Brown family, the wives would only come together to bash on Cody or to say how awful he was or how stupid his ideas were. And that probably says a lot about the family as a whole. Like, you would never see them joking. Like, you never see the Brown family joking about how much they missed him or wish they could have a kiss from him in front of another wife. Right. So, yeah, there's definitely big differences there in having the family all get together. I think it was the end of season 1 when Brady talks about the fact that, when they did decide to leave the church, they all had a chance to decide whether or not they did want to continue to live polygamy. And Polly said she had to really think about it and decide whether or not it was worth it without the religious aspect. So I think the fact that they all decided to stay, even without the religious aspect, without the promise that they had to endure to the end through polygamy, which is how a lot of polygamists are, especially within fundamental Mormonism. It's, this is meant to be hard. It's meant to be a trial. It's meant to be this thing, but will be rewarded in the next life. Well, if you no longer believe in that reward, then, like, what's the trial for? unless it's something that you're willing to do just purely out of love, which is what it seems like for the Williams family.
And 20 years, over 20 years together, right? Whether or not they believe in and would do the polygamy thing all over again, I highly doubt any of the wives would at this point, now that they don't have their religious belief.
Yeah.
But now you have children with this man. You have been together for that many years. You've created this, awkward as it may be, this bond between the other sister wives that have also been around for all of the upbringing of your children. Mm-hmm. So that many years, it would just be hard to make a change, honestly, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, look what happened to the sister wives, the Brown family, right? When Christine decided, I don't want to do this anymore, after basically her and Cody didn't have the same religious beliefs anymore, and she'd been holding on to that for so long. And it blew up, and everyone couldn't believe that she was willing to let go of the family for it because of that bond of just being, even if you're miserable, just being together was enough of a bonding experience that it was a huge deal and a huge bomb to the family. So,
and that goes to show, not that he's doing it perfect, but Brady must be doing something right here if all of the wives choose to stay even after the religion is no longer in, or no longer a part of the family at all. So,
yeah, or part of the motivation, right?
Right.
I mean, I think anybody listening understands what you know what you're referring to.
But yeah, I mean, I think I try really hard. As my number one thing in life is to be a husband and a father, absolutely, and the provider, and that's just the role that I most identify with, and so I'm most committed to that, and that takes the sacrifice of maybe I'm not as good a friend as I want to be, or I don't have hobbies. I mean, I do have things outside of the family, like I'm going to Africa in April with the NGO that I work with, and we're trying to get a school going and cashew help relieve some slavery in Africa. So
wow, very cool.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Are you taking any of the family with you, any of your wives or kids?
Not this trip.
Not this trip.
Yeah, but we're dedicated as a family.
Well, and as they're growing up, are you trying to help? Like, I guess, do you want them to continue in a polygamous relationship in their own lives, or do you not care? And how do they kind of see it? Do they want to have polygamous families, your children as well?
None of my children so far want to do it. I mean, if you were to ask my kids, and some of my kids have been asked, you know, so would you ever live polygamy? They'll say no. But with that said, I would never change my childhood.
Sure.
I had 5 moms, scoreboard, you know? I mean, there was always someone there to love me. There was always someone there to pour me a bowl of Cheerios, or, you know, we have a whole football team when we want to play on Saturday, and I didn't even have to go outside of the family to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so they have all of these things that say that it was the best childhood they ever had. But they also see how hard we try. And it's no easy task.
Yeah, it takes a lot of...
That just reminded me of you, right? Like when people ask you to, like, if you would change your childhood or wish you weren't born into it.
Yeah, exactly. And something, that's just one of those things where what's the point in even wishing that you could change it, honestly? But I know that for some of the other families within the FLDS church, they would be more willing to say, yes, I wish that my life could have been different because of different things that they had to deal with. But luckily for me, it was very similar to what Brady just explained here, that you just had a big family, a lot of mothers around the home all the time that were willing to be there for you and help you out. But, you know, it's not something that I would want for my kids. And I say that because I personally want to be able to give my attention to my children and my wife, right? And not be so spread thin to where my children can only see me every so often. And so I feel like I had a great childhood, but not the childhood that I would wish for my own children. Does that even make sense?
100%.
Okay.
I think two things can be true at once, right? And people so often want to make it seem so black and white, like, well, if you had a good childhood, why wouldn't you want that? Or, you know, a lot of times, even outside of the polygamy aspect, people will be like, Sam grew up with so many siblings, and people say, oh, did that make you want like a ton of kids? And it's like, nope, we have 2 and we're done and we're happy and everything's great, you know? And then there are some people who are born to big families and all they want is to have 11 or 12 kids because that's how it was. But like both things can be true. You can love your childhood and love the way you were raised and that situation and feel like it was a good loving home and not want it for your kids as well. And I think that that's a good thing to recognize.
And I do feel like that I got some good out of it, you know, that I wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. So, you know, that's something that I can take from that experience that I had and the good things that I cherish and that I look back and say, man, I'm so grateful for those things, and pass those things on to my children, you know, the best I can, and try to help them have the best childhood and life that they can as well, but definitely not within polygamy. That's just not something I would ever want to choose, not only for my children, but also for my own relationship with my wife. I don't. And I imagine it's similar with Brady's children, that they just don't want to deal with the stresses of what they see of one man trying to keep 5 women happy.
Yeah.
A lot of humility to be able to live in that relationship. I think, I know you said that you're an open book. I wanted to ask, like, do jealousies come up? I mean, sexually, obviously, there's some, you know, I just know with my own experiences in life and with other people that I know, is that a difficult part of the relationship?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Of course, jealousy is a problem. And, well, privacy is a big deal. I never, ever divulge a confidence. That's one thing that I think I've done well from day one as a polygamist. I try to be as fair as I can be, which means you can't be perfectly fair, but you can be as fair as you possibly can be. And I think a real key, and I have a story to tell maybe if you want.
Yeah, let's do.
So early on, right after I married Rosemary, I was building my house, and we were in between. We rented a room from Rosemary's mom, and we're sitting there having a conversation. And Rosemary's gone. I don't know where she was, but I had the opportunity. It was just me and Rosemary, my mother-in-law, sitting in the living room, and we're talking. And we had a really good relationship, and I was just going on about Rosemary. How much I loved her, how beautiful she was, what an amazing person she was, and she's just sitting there looking at me, and I see her like looking at me like, you know, what's up with you? You know, what are you trying to angle at? And as the face I got, I was like, what? And she's like, you really mean that, don't you? Well, yeah. You know, I am just head over heels in love with your daughter. She means everything to me. And Rosemary's my third wife. And she says, and now Rosemary's mother is like one of the grand matriarchs. Like she's
of the church that you got.
Yeah, the AUB. Like she's been in polygamy for 50 years at that point, 45 years at that point. She's seen it all. And she says, what you have is, if what you say is true, that's so rare. And I go, what are you talking about? That you actually love your plural wife. And I go, this is coming from Donna, you know, and I'm just naive. And I go, no way. Why would anybody marry a woman if they weren't head over heels in love? And she says, there's different reasons. And sadly, I came to find as I matured into the group and became a leader and started having people coming to me with all of their issues. That's absolutely true. I firmly believe that if I had to put a number to it, maybe 90 to 95% of polygamous marriages are they're not marrying because they're head over heels in love. There's that chemistry. There's like, I would do anything for you, sweetie, you know, and you know, you look at them and your heart skips. That type of love, right? They're doing it out of a sense of duty, maybe out of a power grab, or you have to do it to go to heaven. Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard, well, I have to marry another wife so that I can keep my first wife. Because the fundamentalist belief is that, you know, if you don't have your quorum of wives, that you'll not have any of them. Right? Yeah. Right? You'll just be an angel in heaven.
Wow. That's a lot to take in right there.
I know. I like almost paused it like 3 different times, but I wanted to keep hearing what he was saying. But that's heartbreaking, first of all, to hear that it's so not the norm. I mean, in the FLDS, it's different because since they're arranged, you were always taught that you're supposed to fall in love after marriage anyway, right?
Right. So the whole head over heels in the FLDS, I don't think ever, maybe for first wives in some cases, but during the time I was there, it seemed like it was more of the prophet said we were supposed to be together. In most cases, after they get married, then they even spend any time together as far as going out by themselves. And I mean, I remember looking back on some of my older brothers getting married, and they would get a call and say, hey, you're supposed to get married to so-and-so. And they would say, okay. And then later they would go to that lady or my brothers. I don't remember my brothers ever marrying an underage girl. So I don't have to say girls, thankfully, for my brothers personally. But they would go to that woman's home and meet her with her father and mothers there and meet the family. And then in some cases, they would go on a drive with this person that they were supposed to marry. And I'm not saying go on a drive so that they could sneak out and make love somewhere. No, I'm serious. They would go on a drive and just around the town so that they had a chance to talk, to just share a few words because they had maybe a day or two before they were supposed to get married. And then they would go get married, and then really they had that day or two to even talk and get to know each other at all. And then they were married. And so it was really falling in love, or at least trying to fall in love after getting married in the FLDS.
Wow. Honestly, this kind of made me give 1 second of sympathy for maybe Cody is right when he says that he wasn't in love with them, but that it was based on duty, and maybe he acted like he was to try to convince himself that he was. Because
well,
if that's
hold
the
on.
case,
You're saying Cody's right about it? First of all, no, I'm just kidding.
No, I know. I
kidding.
can't be agreeing with Cody here. But when he says that it was primarily duty, and if you're doing it out of duty, but then you're trying to make it seem like you still love them because you still need to love them, I can see that being a tougher road of reconciliation there.
See, and yes, well, and this is what Brady's saying here too, is that for most people, 95% of the polygamous marriages are not because they're head over heels in love with them. It's because they are trying to fulfill their duty, and they feel like they have to do this in order to live in the eternities.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if it's different though, because the marriages are not arranged.
Yeah, so they do have the choice. But then again, when you're in a religious group that is so controlling, it's still a tough line of like, is that your choice, or is it you're still doing it based off of duty? Mm-hmm. Right? So yes, you could say no. Brady said no to some women. Maybe Cody could have said no, but he didn't feel like he could and still be the faithful member that he wanted to be either. Right? And I had never heard the saying that he just barely said of that men would say, if I want to keep my first wife, I have to have a plural wife. Because that's sad as well. Because if they did fall in love with their first wife, like what Brady was kind of implying, that like your first wife is kind of like a regular, you're courting, you fall in love, you get married. If you are in love with that first wife and you want them for eternity, the idea that you have to be married to other women in order to make that happen, and then can you imagine the amount of jealousy that would cause?
Yeah, that would be...
Like, you're my placeholder so that I can be married to my love over here.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough, but it's a whole different mindset when you're raised in that, right? And in the FLDS, for example, I don't remember them saying anything specifically like that you have to have more than one wife to keep your first wife. It was more that you had to be willing when God called to accept more wives, because that was living the plural marriage. That was living the celestial law, as they would say. But it wasn't one of those where you could be out looking for another wife, or a wife could come up to you and say, hey, I want to marry you. So it was it was very different, but I never heard that you had to be married to more than one wife in order to keep your first wife.
Yeah, we have heard some people say that. Sam never did growing up, but there are definitely quite a few people that have said that
had to have 3 wives.
You had to have 3 wives in order to get to heaven. So I'm guessing that's what the AUB believed in as well in order to make that happen, or at
Right.
least plural marriage.
And that's Mormon doctrine, by the way. But but I never married for that. I'm so grateful that I fell head over heels in love with all five.
The fact that he mentioned that that's Mormon doctrine means he knows exactly who said that and where,
Yeah.
that you had to live plural marriage
Well,
in order to
Yeah,
be with your first wife.
all of this plural marriage talk and the celestial law, and this is the way you have to live in order to return to God, was from the original prophets of the mainstream LDS Church, which are also the original prophets that all of the fundamentalist groups believe in as well.
Yeah.
So that's where the fundamentalists are getting their information. In fact, Brigham Young and Joseph Smith were the two most talked about prophets in the FLDS Church until Warren Jeffs took over, and then he was somehow this godlike figure. But before Warren Jeffs, it was all about Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and their teachings that were mostly talked about. A lot of people assume that it was the prophets that came after them that the LDS Church don't believe in. But no, it was teachings from those first two prophets that primarily are taught and talked about in the FLDS Church as well.
Yeah.
And I think that that's been a real key to the success, is because I am totally invested in them as a being. And it's almost like I don't have a choice but to be, because I'm so in love.
Well, and I want to kind of, on that point, I kind of want to go back again when you did leave the Fundamentalist Church. How did the wives all kind of come to that decision to go with you? Because they all left, you said, prominent families.
Yeah.
And then follow-up is, how did those families then treat you, and how do they treat you today?
Yeah. So I've said it a million times that for me to leave the group may be significant, but it was nothing compared to what it took for my wives to leave the group. I mean, I was born and raised to challenge authority. If you know my dad, that's what he does. And he taught me to always ask. My wives were born and raised to say yes, to toe the line. And for them to stand up and do what they did and question authority, question everything that they believed, and say what is true, was really amazing. And slowly but surely, over about a 5-year period of time, they all came to it on their own. I mean, they would ask questions, but there was never any compulsion or, hey, you need to leave because I'm leaving, or you need to question this because I'm questioning this. It was just, this is what I'm looking at.
Well, that really speaks to who they are as people as well.
Yeah.
And so how did the families react? I mean, and do you have...
it was tough.
And to day to day, are they all still in the church?
In the group?
Church, yeah.
Yeah.
And how's that relationship with them and you and the whole thing?
Very strained. Some not as strained as others. But like Polly's parents, they're really nice and treat me like a good son. But you know, others are pretty tough. You know, and there's been some real drama. And Rosemary's revelations about her dad, who's the prophet, you know, that went all over the press. And
you know, when he points out that some of the relationships are okay and good with some of the families, and that it just takes me to my experience right now, because I have a lot of family that are still in the FLDS Church following Warren Jeffs, and I could tell he hesitated for just a second there. And I always deal with this same thing, where you want to give credit where credit is due for those family members that are really trying hard to keep a good relationship because they love their family. But at the same time, I always hesitate because I don't want to name names about any family or any relatives that are trying hard, because that could get them in trouble with the group, and that could put them into this really awful place with the church. And then they're going to be having struggles on both sides, not being able to really associate with their family that is out, and also being kind of shunned within their own group because it gets out that they're paying attention and being too kind to the outside world and those apostates. So I feel for you, Brady. I always hesitate. I'm like, I want to give credit to these people, but I don't dare say who they are because I don't want to get them in trouble with the religion that they believe in.
Yeah.
It's tough. And they most of them really don't like me. In fact, I was labeled a son of perdition.
Oh, okay. That's what I was kind of wondering, is if you're kind of seen as like this guy that pulled them away from their heritage or whatever.
For sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm the author of they're going to go to hell, and it's because of me.
Got it. Well,
that's kind of I'd say a common theme for any time within any Mormonism, right? Like, people don't want to blame their child for any leaving, and so it's easier to blame the spouse.
Right.
I know there's been family members on both sides of our family that blame each other for, oh, well, it must have been her forcing Sam to leave or Sam forcing me to leave. And it's just tough, because when family loves you, they don't want to believe that you could step away from your previous beliefs, especially when they're so deeply ingrained as fundamental Mormonism or mainstream Mormonism. It's kind of the same deal there as well. So it can be really hard on families, and it can be hard on relationships.
Yeah, unfortunately, parents oftentimes take the blame for the decisions that their children make when it comes to this, like, religious beliefs and religious decisions. And so when a parent sees one of their children leaving, they don't want to take the blame, and so it's easier to blame the person, the spouse, and say, no, it's because of that person that my child is leaving, because I taught them better.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
And so skipping back again to the TV show, what was the decision to go on the show, and what benefits came from doing the TV show? We did it for 2 years? Or
we did it for 2 full seasons.
Yeah.
We went on the show to give a voice and to show, hey, you know what, polygamy isn't just about religious wackos, and you can be, we call it normal times 5, and we're just a normal family. We're just bigger and a little bit more dynamics than the typical family, and we wanted to get that message out there. Did we? I don't know. I was disappointed with some of the stuff. I thought, it shows the high of the highs and the low of the lows, and there's always creative editing. Is it all real? Yeah, it was all real, but
I did
the context.
I did a TV show back in the day, like 12 years ago, called Not on the First Date, and I would line up a guy and a girl on a date, and we would film it. And I realized very quickly, I could make the date, no matter what really happened, I could make every single date look as good or as bad as I wanted.
Oh, yeah.
I remember one particular time they were at dinner, and it was a boring episode, so I was trying to spice it up. And the guy he literally says, "What the heck?" And then he follows it up with, "I think something just touched my leg." Well, when I edited it, it says, "What the beep? Something just touched my beep." And she's laughing, and so the whole thing looks completely more inappropriate than it actually was. I was just trying to spice it up and made him look like he was being vulgar at the table.
Right.
So you can really mess with it if you want to.
And me and the executives got in some real heated exchanges, because there was some creative editing back in LA that I was, one of them involved my teenage daughter, and they creatively edited it to where it seemed like she was having, we were having a birds and the bees talk. And I just says, hey, I just think premarital sex is a bad idea, and if I were you, I'd really encourage you to wait till you get married. And they have my 12-year-old daughter. They took a scene where they were interviewing me and her about cleaning her bedroom.
Oh no!
And she's like, "Dad, duh," because I was getting on her about something, And they spliced it into that scene, and her having a fit that I'm asking her not to have sex at 12 years old. And I got the final cut I got it every Monday or Tuesday before the next Sunday. And I saw that cut. I was sitting there watching on my iPad, and I got on the horn with one of the vice presidents of TLC, and it just says, if that makes it on Sunday night's airing, don't bother sending the cameraman back. And we were only halfway through filming. And she's like, you can't do that. You're contractually obligated. And it says, sue me.
Wow.
It's not going to happen. And she says, Brady, I get it. I understand, but it's too late. It's released, and they're cutting it. They're making it. And I said, I don't care. I don't care what you have to do. That will not make it. And to her credit, she pulled whatever string she had to, and it's a real. If you go back and watch that scene, it's a real rough.
Sure.
Most people can't tell, but I can tell where they cut it out.
It made it look a little bit better for
you.
No, that's I think.
Good for him.
See,
Oh.
and to both of their points here, editing is pretty powerful when it comes to these shows, and so it's so hard to know, even like with Sister Wives, that we get so angry about some of the things we see, and if they're allowing that big of changes to make it, from taking from another conversation and splicing it with this conversation, oh yeah, I can see how they can completely change the entire feeling of a conversation.
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's why, like, all of reality TV shows in general, you like to think that you're like a fly on the wall and like, I can totally see what's going on, but no, we're not. We're not seeing 90% of their lives. We're seeing the dates that they want us to see. We're seeing the trips that they want us to see. We're seeing the group meetings that they want us to see.
Right.
And then there's editing on top of it. So it is a good reminder that we're not really seeing what their lives are actually like on the day-to-day.
Right. Yeah. And it's easy for like us, sitting here in front of a camera talking about things to leave it more raw. But when it's actually family filming day to day, they only have so many parts of these people's lives that they can pick from to even show and air. Yeah, I can see them getting pretty creative. That's why most of the time when we have been reviewing this show and Sister Wives, we start with, now, we know this is just a show.
Yeah,
but based
exactly.
on what we see, this is what we feel. So, and who knows, maybe most of it is real, but clearly, as Brady shares here, they definitely play with it a lot.
Yeah, good for him for getting it changed.
Yeah.
I think that's, you can't be making it look like your daughter's trying to be promiscuous.
I know. I mean, it was
was
such a misrepresentation.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take some creative editing, but there were things like that maybe 2 or 3 times.
So was there some negatives that came out of doing the TV show then? I mean, if you could do it over again, would you do it again? And
I would do it only if the premise behind it was more of a family-friendly show. Because let's face it, the polygamous shows that are out there, the reason people tune in is because they want to see if the wife's going to leave. They're there to be titillated. They're not there to feel good.
if you guys are all getting along, it's kind of a boring TV show, I guess.
Right.
So
America doesn't watch a polygamy show to feel better. They watch it to see a train wreck. And honestly, we probably didn't get the ratings we wanted to because we just didn't give them enough train wreck.
Fair enough.
Yep.
We all know who
We
he's
agree.
referring to here. Huh?
And also, we can agree because I'll be honest, season 2 of My 5 Wives was not that interesting. They pulled a lot of stuff from season 1, but it was very much more real life, They're still talking about the same things they were months ago, and it wasn't that exciting to watch. So, and that's nothing against them as a family. That's a good thing, probably.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
if you have a good, boring family, is going to be much happier than the train wreck family that's going to be super entertaining.
But he's right. I mean, though the idea of polygamy is very unique and very strange, I don't think people tune on to watch a polygamy show to see just a
And be happy,
very
normal.
almost normal like looking family. They want to see something unique that keeps them more entertained. And yeah, I agree. There were definitely those moments where we were almost nodding off in season 2 because we were like, wow, I mean, I'm very happy that seems to be going well for them.
Yes, but mean that as a compliment, Brady.
Yes, but when you're trying to find stuff like us, for example, trying to find things to discuss and talk about in these seasons, there wasn't a whole lot.
No. If you do want to see what we talked about, I'll leave a link above them.
Yes, we did review them.
And my wives get along better than that.
Well, so do you think that more men should be in polygamous relationships, or do you feel like, what's your opinion about monogamy versus polygamy and everything?
I think I'm very open that I just think polygamy is so rarely lived for the right reasons, and it's so easy for men to dominate women that it should probably die out. And I'm a polygamist with 5 men, and I think it should. I don't think that. I mean, I think that a man should have the right. I think I think grown adults should have the right to
Marry if they
live
want.
however they want,
Sure.
and nobody should have a say in it, with the caveat that it's non-compulsory. You know, and
Explain that a little bit. 'Cause
yeah,
I know what
so,
you mean, but
yeah, like if a woman, even if it's cultural compulsion, that's still compulsion. Like they're born and raised to live. Well, if they're never presented with an alternative, that's compulsion. I really think that it's really important for these closed societies to be opened. Closed polygamous societies, and not just polygamous, but fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is a real problem in the world today. You know, the same thing that makes an Islamic extremist strap on a bomb vest in Afghanistan is the same reason that a little girl has to get married at 12 years old down in Short Creek. And dare I say, many other fundamentalist things.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same reason that, I mean, forgive me, but I think the same reason that women can't have the priesthood. It's these old traditional fundamentalist views that are short-sighted and frankly part of the patriarchy. You know, this idea of male domination.
Dang. Comparing all of those things. I've never thought about that because we so often we're just focused on the polygamy aspect, right? And we're comparing and talking about different polygamous groups. We have talked about some other religious groups as well that do have a lot of similarities. And now that he mentions that, there have been quite a few that we have covered. So we can see and we have seen how similar a lot of these groups, or like Brady calls the closed society groups, have so many more similarities than differences. Even if they don't practice polygamy, there's still a lot of similarities. So that's a very good point, and I think he's right.
Yeah, it is.
And almost all of them have the patriarchy that he's talking about.
Yes. It's sad to hear that something, that in some of these societies where people are dying because of beliefs they have, and other societies that think that they're doing everything just fine because they're not hurting anyone. But there are many different ways to be hurt. And unfortunately, in a lot of these closed off societies, maybe it's not always death, but there's a lot of people being hurt, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think it's a very fascinating way that you can look at that. I think that you're correct. I think, in the same sense that I believe that anytime I travel, for example, my eyes are just open to more things, right? I see more things, more opportunities come to me, and all of a sudden my ideals of what I thought, certain groups of people or races or whatever might have been is completely changed, and every single time for the better. And so I think as long as people have opportunity, let them make the choices they make. But it's very interesting, like you said, if they've never known anything besides polygamy, they're going to think that's the only way, that's the right way, that's the best way.
Yeah, do they really have a choice?
Yeah.
If you don't even know that there's something different, no, you don't have a choice. And so that's why education is so important. And that's why I'm out there trying to educate people, and particularly fundamentalists, that there's something else out there. And a fundamentalist, maybe even a polygamist, obviously is who I can speak to with the most clarity and say, you don't have to sacrifice your family. I didn't. There is another way. You really can embrace a new progressive worldview without losing everything. And it's called love. It's called tolerance. It's called acceptance. And those principles, they're really strong. They're really powerful, and they work. And you can go from dude, I was as extreme and fundamental as you could be. I was the poster child. And now I'm the other way, and I'm really trying to raise a bunch of kids to be dynamic people that can change the world, and I think they are.
I love it. Well, and your kids, they're starting to graduate high school now. Some are in college and things like that, right? Give us an idea of what are some of your kids doing now?
Okay. Yes.
Sorry, before he gets on his kids, I just wanted to point out, I think it's interesting that he said I was the poster child for that, and now I'm the poster child the opposite way. And Sam and I have talked about this before, where your personality, or especially when you're taught to share the truth.
Yeah.
A lot of times, people will say, you can leave a religion, but you can't leave it alone, or that when you leave, people won't, stop fighting against what they had before. Or in this case, people from the AUB are going to be looking at Brady and being like, now you're fighting against AUB and you're saying that no one should live polygamy. Why would you do that? But the way you're raised and ingrained to teach the truth, if your truth changes or what you believe to be true changes, that inherent need and what you've been taught to share that with other people, that piece of you doesn't change. So if you've been taught your entire life, and he was taught, raised mainstream LDS, which we're definitely taught in the mainstream LDS church to share our church message with the entire world. Yeah. From a very young age, you're taught to be a missionary and to share and share and share. And then he's going to the AUB and he has higher callings there. And he's a 70 apostle. And I'm sure he was being taught to I don't know how much proselyting they do, but the fact that he's in a higher calling, meaning he's sharing the gospel, sharing the gospel, sharing the gospel. Oh, yeah. When his mind shifts and he now doesn't believe those are true, but he does believe that this over here is true, it makes sense that he would want to be the poster child for that and share that truth that he has now found out. Because those who are so determined and believe in their truth before, if they're big sharers over there, they're going to be big sharers over here. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's almost absurd to think that someone's going to stop and change their personality of sharing, or that that's going to go away within them just because what they believe to be true is different now.
Exactly. Yeah, very well said. Very well said. I think that, and a moment for anyone listening that thinks that their church is the only church that says if someone leaves, they're going to fight back they're going to fight the church that you're a part of. That is absolutely every church, or at least the closed societies like the FLDS, the AUB, the Kingston Group, so many other churches out there are going to say that if you leave, you can't leave it alone, like Melissa said. You're going to have to fight against it. But no, like Melissa said, once again, it's just about them feeling the need to share what they believe to be true because the leaders of these churches taught them that they need to share, bear their testimony. That was, and this might put into perspective for other groups too, is in the FLDS church, even though we weren't proselytizing and going out to the world to try to bring members into the church, we were always taught to share and bear our testimonies. Mm-hmm. To get up in front of our family, to get up in front of other people in the community and share our belief and share it often so that we will always remember what it is that we believe to be true, right? So even if you're not out there telling the entire world, still that idea is there that you need to always share your belief. So that's going to continue on if you leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my oldest, she's wonderful. She's beautiful. She has 2 grandsons, and she's just a stay-at-home mom up in Montana. I have another daughter who is going for her PhD in prosthetic design. Another one is an environmental scientist, and she has dreams of she's going to be going to a master's program in Colorado. And then my son, he helps make chocolate, and he's engaged to a young lady in Ecuador. Wow. And they're about to get married.
Very cool.
And I have 4 daughters who have 5 daughters who are on full ride scholarships in university, and another son in college. All have scholarships and are doing great things, and then a whole bunch of kids coming up, So
are you guys done now? Have you guys had your final kid?
Yes.
Or all 5 wives are now finished?
We're done. 25's where it ends.
25. Did you ever have like a number you wanted to get? Because when you're little, you always like, I'm going to have 7 kids, and then...
Yeah, I mean...
Were you always like, as soon as I get to 25, I'm done having...
Well, when I was in the LDS church, I thought I'd have 4 kids just like my mom and dad did.
Sure.
But then...
Just want to point out that answers our question that Rhonda obviously never adopted.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the show, she was trying to adopt multiple times, making phone calls and things. And if 25 is the end, that means that she never was allowed or able to, unless they just chose against it eventually. But the show doesn't make that clear.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And I joined the polygamous group, and I thought I'd have 50. And then I got at about 20 kids, and I'm like, man, that's a lot of kids to take care of. And And then, the last couple kids were probably oops babies, but, we're sure glad we had them.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm glad I could have you on. I think it just breaks down. I know when I was little, a legitimate fear of what a polygamist looked like or was, right? You just don't know. There's so many things you hear. And I wanted to get an interview. After meeting you, I knew that anybody that listened to how you really believe and how your family functions and everything else, it just kind of changes, hopefully, that view of what you guys have been doing. And, like you said, even though that fundamentalist has those negatives, every case is completely different, and it's that importance to treat everybody with love, I think is the key message of the whole thing. So.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I appreciate you, man.
Well, that was a cool interview. I'm glad. I definitely gave a lot more insight to his religious beliefs, where he stands now. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I'm glad. I definitely feel like this is a good way to wrap up the My Five Wives, unless Brady, you're out there and you want to come talk to us, because we'd love to talk to you in person.
Yeah. This interview was done back in 2018, I believe.
Yeah, it said 6 years ago. Yeah.
So it's been a while, and so obviously I know Brady's probably in a different spot at this point, and who knows where. But if either Brady, if he sees this, or if anyone out there knows how to at least send him a message or something, that would be fantastic to know. We'd love to reach out and see kind of what he's up to these days.
Yeah, so a lot of fun covering My Five Wives. And if you want to hear more about what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, or more things like this where we can compare other people's polygamous experiences to Sam's, and LDS perspectives and fundamentalism and all that good stuff wrapped up into one, then please like and subscribe.
All that good stuff.
All that good stuff.
Thank you all so much. We look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.